didn't send me a link a few days ago, so I saw it for the second time this morning.
Yes, I can start.
So, Richa, can you tell me something about how you, how you decided to make a film here, and what led you to Nicobar? What led you to this idea?
So actually, it was our friend John. In 2004, when the tsunami actually happened, we were in FTII as students of FTII. That time we were studying there, and then the enormity of the disaster was so much that I'm sure there was nobody who was left untouched, and we were wondering what could we do, and how we could kind of be of any help whatsoever. It was only when we met John, in 2006, a couple of years later, we were at a fellowship. We were fellows of Commutiny. So that's where he was also a fellow. It's only when we met John, a tsunami survivor, that we realized that all this idea of us from outside, that help would not have worked. And that help was more of of course, I mean, help helped in a certain way, but more than help, it was more of a disaster in itself back in the islands. And that kind of triggered our interest and our kind of attention, and we started reading more and more about it, of exactly because his story was very interesting. John's story was very interesting. He said that I don't know how I just ended up climbing a coconut tree, and I saw my entire house kind of floating away. It's going away. And then they were stranded. He was in Great Nicobar in Campbell Bay. And then they were stranded for about 4 days. And he was one of the youngsters. He was that time 19 years old. So how he was kind of getting people and the elderly he was taking care of and waiting for the helicopter and the relief to come and all of that. So that story and his experience kind of triggered our interest, and we started reading more and more about it. And then we thought, yes, it's something that we need to know, and something that kind of we started researching, and that's how the film happened. So
Right.
that was our first. That's how we got into the film as a proposal. We wrote the proposal in 2008. We started thinking about the film and researching in 2006, late 2006-7. We wrote the proposal in 2008. We got the sanction in 2010. The entire thing happened. It took, and the first schedule for shooting schedule, we went in 2010-11. So it was a long process, and the film finished in late 2015-16. So it took about 5-6 years to make the film. It was a long time.
So, did you film it all in one go, or
No.
how long were you there totally?
We were there in the islands over a period of 2 years. We shot in 2 schedules. Each schedule was about 4 to 5 months long. Because there was no way, once you go in, you cannot, I mean, of course you can come out, but then again, you have to go through the entire process of getting the permits. And from one island to the other was itself a huge task. So we went, our film is mostly anchored in the central group of islands, which is a cluster of islands. And some of the islands were fairly inaccessible. So it was difficult internally to travel from one island to another, and it took that time. So over a period of 9 to 10 months on the islands, the film was shot. So that was it.
Um, I often find, especially when even if it's within our own country, our own people, because there are places that we haven't gone to or explored, or communities that we haven't met, that when we're confronted with it for the first time, it could even be as simple as someone from the north coming down to south now. If you look at Instagram like pictures, we tend to exoticize the visuals, right? Like, did you find that challenging? Because a lot of the things that confronted you when you went there, apart from the visible damage to the community and the focus of your film, There may have been other things that you wouldn't have seen before culturally. So how new was that, and how did you get into normalizing that for yourself and getting the community to accept you also?
See, exoticizing was never a problem because that was never a look. That was never the way we looked at things. Also, we never.
Right.
It was never a question of being an Indian and still, because uh, it was just a people, me coming from a set of people approaching another set of people. So there was this familiarity on a human level, and there was this distance on a cultural level. So the degree of exploration was so much, and everything was so new that the entire time went in understanding rather than representing or exoticizing. The entire effort, the entire energy went in understanding what was happening at the ground level because things were complex. Films Division commissioned the film to us. Actually, the proposal was based on housing. We thought that we will make a film on housing because the entire housing, the traditional housing was swept away, and the rehabilitation plan, the new housing scheme was put for them. The houses were being made for them, and we actually went when the last house was being built in the last of the settlements in Makachua. That was the time. So we went into the islands when actually the relief and rehabilitation works were being drawn out. And now that the people were left first time for them with themselves, how were they taking a stock of their lives? So for they were grappling with themselves and their state of being as much as we were grappling with who they are and how we are supposed to be. So it was all new for all of us. So there was no time to really kind of, get into the exotic aspect of their life because there was none. And because we did not look at it that way. The entire effort was towards understanding what was happening to them. They were understanding what was happening to themselves. And the islands were protected under the Andaman Nicobar Protection of Aboriginal Tribes regulation. So there was very little that that they were used to the media. During tsunami, of course, there was a lot, and it was almost like, when a trauma happens and it's so severe that you forget about it, that kind of, you can't remember. So they were completely blank in that sense. They were more into their present, which was anyways too much to kind of live through. I think when we came, or when we were there, like how generally we would ask each other, oh, how are you? I'm fine, When I asked people, how are you? Or we asked really simple questions because there was this huge language gap. At times we asked nothing, and we were just used to sit there and wait for people to talk. But we've had simple questions. So, very simple questions. So what do you do? How is it going? But for our really two-line, 2-word, 3-word questions, they took their time, and they had really long and thoughtful answers. So very simple questions triggered very deep reflection in people because they took the questions very seriously. And they had very thoughtful answers. And I think that is what kind of worked for us. Ribu is here. Ribu, would you like to join? He'll join in 5 minutes. Yeah.
Right. No, what you're saying, it does strike a chord with me because there's one interview where this gentleman in your film says, "Thank you for listening."
Yeah.
Right? Yes, I want to thank you. And I thought that was
Chowra.
a beautiful moment. And also at that time, I did wonder what you were talking about earlier when you said it was very traumatic. I wondered if, apart from just housing, whether any therapists or counselors, because I think even for someone who just witnessed the tsunami, right? My father lived a few hundred meters from where it happened in Chennai, and
Yeah.
even for someone who just witnessed, who didn't see the effects of the devastation but just saw it, it was a huge shock. It was a huge shock, and for people who had to live through it like this, and to see so much of their community wiped out and the entire island literally devastated. When I heard that, when I heard him say thank you for listening to me, I felt like perhaps that's the most important thing, bearing witness as documentary filmmakers, right? And collecting stories and making people feel, yes, your story does matter. It may not be, it may not, we don't judge like, your story is better than mine. Everyone's experience matters. And I wondered then if there was some kind of a counseling or something that these, what do you have to
See, when tsunami happened in 2004, it's like the world rushed in to help. It was like the world rushed into him. So I would say it was like a tsunami after tsunami. So the kind of let's say the way the wave entered into their life and swept everything away. It was a wave after the wave. I mean, there were 7 waves. It was the tsunami after the tsunami when the entire world rushed in to help. And yes, they were bringing, the tea was going somewhere, the milk was going somewhere, the tents were going somewhere, the rope of the tents were landing up somewhere else. And, so they didn't know what to do with like the sanitary pads, and they used to make pillows out of the sanitary pads. So, and of course, there were counseling happening at that point of time, till 2005, till latest 2006. 2006. But when we entered the island, in 2009, that is about really 5 years, 5 to 6 years after tsunami, all of it was not there. So we did not witness any sort of counseling. The last we witnessed was the PWD team doing construction in the Makachua Island. And the regular administrative jobs that were there and the administrative officers who were there, So that was happening. And for us as filmmakers and for them talking to us, it was very difficult. It was almost impossible for them to talk about what happened then in 2005-06. Because somehow, no matter which way we asked the questions, we could never get to the memory or the experience of 2005-06. You see, it's hardly there in our film. Because it did not somehow, they could not. And it was one person, only one person, an old man, he gave an account of what happened then. And of course, there was Doris, whose account is there in the beginning of the film. So I remember this account, which we've not used in the film. He said, oh, it was Christmas and we were drinking toddy and everything was moving anyways. And then it started moving a bit too much. And then the water came. And then we walked and we ran and we ran and, so it was so flat. And then, but what happened, the people, and so there was no critique of either counseling or acceptance or comment, forget critique, because it was too much for them to revisit. And the counseling aspect of it was a part of the rehabilitation and relief aspect, which faded away, which was not there when we reached the islands. So, there was, there was TIS there was Oxfam, there were a lot of people who were there, but they were there in that entire relief and rehabilitation phase. And we as filmmakers landed up post the relief and rehabilitation phase when people were left to themselves. And when people were left to themselves, the task in front of them was the task to raise plantations and to figure out how to live without money. And that was really not that phase in their minds to think about the counseling that they might have, the entire relief aspect of it when it was being done post-tsunami.
Right. We have others who comment. So does anyone else have a question before I resume? Because I do have a lot, because I really I found the film very interesting. And
Nina, can I invite Roshini?
Yes.
Roshini?
Thank you for that lovely film.
Thank you.
It was eye-opening in many aspects and also very disturbing. It was good to see the resilience of the people also. I had a basic question in that I see references to some people getting education, going for police training and so forth. What is the representation of the local people in the administration? And how much say do they have at the administrative level about what's happening in their lives?
The composition of Nicobar is not uniform. Okay, let's put it this way. We are, we are talking about only the Nicobars. The Andaman Nicobars, the Andaman is the separate aspect of it. It's the northern group of islands, which is completely Negreto, tribe. And the Nicobars is the Mongoloid tribe, the southern group of islands. So within the Nicobar group of islands, there are 11 habitable islands, and most of the cluster is there in the central group. So within the Nicobars, the range of exposure people have had and the range of access or integration with the so-called administrative benefits is variable, completely variable. So some people are completely off the administrative, benefit, and some people are completely into it. So it's different for different group, different for different people, and different for different islands. Let's look at the Car Nicobar. Car Nicobar, which is the headquarter of the Nicobar group of islands. So the entire administrative benefit, Car Nicobar has been the main beneficiary. And I would say they have absolute say, and they have at least a huge number of people joining civil services, becoming government teachers, all of that. So
Tribal council.
Yeah, there is a tribal council there. So they have a huge say, and the administration completely looks up to and refers to tribal council for all their decision making. So the amount of say or control that the tribal people have over their administration is a huge percentage. But that's for select people and in select group within the larger group of islands.
Thank you.
Yeah. See, the thing is, you see, people like there is Hindi medium schools there. People are learning Hindi. Hindi is the language in the school. That's because, after Indira Gandhi, they wanted to kind of, let's call it, Indianize the islands, to kind of integrate them within the Indian system. So also how John, the co-producer of the film, landed up there, because they sent kind of people from the mainstream into these groups to kind of raise plantations and to kind of have settlements in the islands. So the schools are there, and some fantastic schools are there. But then again, it really depends, the access to the administrative services and the access to the government benefits is for select few. And it's more in control of the tribal leaders and in control of the tribal council.
So I understand that the smaller islands are not represented in the tribal councils. Is that correct?
But they also have their own tribal councils.
Yeah.
So even like even Chaura has a tribal council. Even Teresa has their own tribal council. So they are very well represented, and the fact that there was no administration whatsoever in an island like Chaura till 90s, there was not even a police booth. It's only after tsunami administration could put one person of theirs in the island. So that is the case, but there is no but it is like that. It's not a question of representation. It is question of their own choices. And that is what they are very well aware of. Whatever choices they have been making, they are making that on their own accord. And yes, they are listening to some of their leaders. And yes, some of their leaders have had the access and privilege of mainland education and worldview. And gradually a matriarchal society is transiting into a place in a patriarchal one from within, primarily from within. Otherwise, if they could have resisted, there some people are trying to resist. And yes, their understanding of ownership and property is also changing. What is most important is there is one sequence in the dark where Like, whom does the land belong to? And the land belongs to nobody. And that is the primary question for them, and which is not a very cinematic sequences or discourse, but that is the primary question throughout. Because we remember the assistant commissioner of the island is saying, you guys are going into the islands, you are meeting people. Please explain them that we are bringing in new trees. We are giving from our government side, we are distributing coconut trees and palm trees. Ask them to do plantation, ask them to plant trees. They are not planting trees anymore because all the trees are gone. We have to regenerate the land. But the big question is, if you plant a tree, whom does the tree belong to? And that has to be resolved at a community level, because they say the land does not belong to anybody, but he who plants the tree on the land is entitled to the fruit. And that worldview vis-a-vis the worldview of ownership and family, that who owns how much, and so that is the main conflict, which cannot be articulated, because they have everybody now is living in 2 BHKs, where there were only 50 houses, or not even 50, 4 houses in one village. Right now there are 150. That means all these people were living in one house, one big house, sleeping together, in the daytime working together, but they were all under one roof at night, which is no more the case.
Are those the beehive houses that were being described?
Yeah, sorry.
Nitakaru.
Homes were the beehive homes?
Nitakaru.
See, when in Chaura we went in, let's say 2011, we were in Chaura. So we were sleeping in a lockup, because there were no guest houses, and lockup was the only place which was like empty. So that's the extent of government intervention on an island like that. That the places which are the most empty and the most unused are the police lockups.
Police station.
Police station.
It is newly built. So where will you stay? That is the only building where you can stay. It's nice and all that. So you clean it up. They opened it. Okay, that is the place. And the policemen are also can't do anything. Because there are 2 policemen. And if the villagers are not happy with the 2 policemen, they will be sent back, because they don't even give firewood to the policemen. They will say, "We will not. You have to bring your firewood from Andamans, from wherever you are coming." And there was a case where one cop did not behave well, so he had to leave, and to go on to the ship, they will not give you the small boat. So if they don't give you the small boat through which you can, because the ship can't come to the shore because the waves are very high. So you have to be given a hodi to go where the water is a little stable. So that is so they will be left at the shore and say, you have to go back and we will not give you a float to go to the ship. You have to go away. So yeah, so they were like that, but situation, it has changed, but
that was the most difficult learning, actually, to realize that or to witness a dying of a worldview, actually. So how do civilizations die? People don't die. It's just something that they have carried, the intangible culture and heritage that dies. And that's how civilizations die. People survive into another forms. They become different human beings, So the clothes change, the language changes, the thought changes, priorities change. So they are different people, and they themselves know it. They know it. They are different people. I think they are the people who knew the death, that tsunami brought, and not tsunami, but the tsunami after tsunami.
But there is no trauma around that.
Charger. Sorry, I forgot to put it on.
But there is no trauma around that change, because what is one other very interesting thing is a person, a 30-year-old man had no religion, then he became a Christian, then he became a Muslim, and then he again became a Christian, and now was again choosing to have no religion. So you meet people who became a Francis, then become Irfan, and so that happens. They are okay with it, and they are adaptive far more okay, for otherwise, people are still very rigid. Okay, I am a Muslim or I am a Hindu. How can I? For them, it is a matter of, okay, it's something interesting. Let us try it out. They take whatever comes their way. Motorcycles, television sets, everything they take it, you know. So but they are very, very modern in some senses because they were in touch with the world, All the ships that were going from the Middle East to Singapore and they were in the heart of the main trade route. All ships that were going to Burma and to what you call Malaysian ports, Singapore and on the other side, Kutch.
On the spice route entirely.
And Saudi Arabia were stopping there at one point of time till they became mechanized. So they did not have anything to trade apart from coconuts, but they knew people, So there are people still there who can speak Japanese, who can speak Thailand. So they eat on tables which are almost like army-like culture, First women, then men. So you see that in the film also, even in a chowra, you see tables are laid, porcelain dishes, things being served. So they want to be, the access was not there. But unlike the Andamanis or Greater Andamanis, you'll say, okay, the Negrito tribes, these people were open to the world. Yeah, they're very open to the world. They are. Like me and Richa, we had our daughter was with us. So we were going somewhere and we took somebody's scooter and in one of the islands we were going, and at one place under a tree, she had to breastfeed my daughter. So we were just waiting under a tree. All of a sudden we see two boys, running from far. They came running. They had nothing to say. They just got a teapot, a tablecloth, two chairs, then a teapot, everything in the middle of this. Somebody noticed from far, immediately, all under that tree, they made arrangements.
Yeah, in the middle of nothing, suddenly, there was an entire table laid in 5 minutes in front, with bananas and everything. So it was, I think it was a completely eye-opening experience for us, the time we spent in the islands.
They're rich people, they will not give you an opportunity to look down on them. They don't work, An anthropologist did a work and he said, Nicobaris works for 15 minutes a day. Actual work for living. 37 minutes a day. Otherwise he's not interested in money. They don't have to. They don't climb the trees to pick up coconuts. They wait for it to fall. So it is like that, And if they climb up for us, they would wait, They'll give you one coconut, the person is up there. You finish drinking one, you want another one, I'll give. You will not bring the whole thing down. So it is a completely different, there's a completely different mind altogether. And yes, they in fact, they say that we did not want any help. They were okay with the tsunami. Tsunami was not a big problem for them. But the big problem was that, okay, they needed a knife to cut things. They did not have that. When they asked for it, they got something else altogether. So that was the biggest problem. And now they have the problem is that their social fabric has also changed. So much of money has come, and for 7 years, if a ship full of goodies come in front of you, even if you don't eat it, but you will still taste it because somebody is telling you that it is edible. And it keeps coming for 5 years, it stops. Then somebody does a public interest litigation. It goes to the court so that you cannot stop this. Unless each and everything that you have promised, you have given, you have to keep giving free goods to them. Government says, okay, another 3 years of free goodies. Done. It keeps shipping them. Half of it is not used. Okay, some biscuits they don't like. So you will see one island full of biscuits. Corner is full of or vegetable oil. There is lots of vegetable oil. It's rotting. So, okay, no problem. We will give it to you. But that generation who was 8 years old is today an adult knowing that things come like this, and then one day it stops.
Then what?
And that is the question, then what? And then what is going to be now? Because probably by now all these houses are gone. They are just The roofs are rotting, the paints are gone, their electricity is like they're giving electrical
wood is-
shocks, the metal is all the electricity is a big problem. They don't know how to manage all that.
See, when we went, people were done. There used to be these packets of milk powder, huge packets of milk powder. They are the people who are not, drinking milk. So they are mixing milk and giving it to the pig, So the pig is having the milk powder all the time. And then people are, the bathrooms, they are not used to the bathrooms. The bathrooms become the place to keep their pigs.
Yeah, and pigs also, it's
know-
strange. How does one treat a pig? The fact that pig is to be a civilization, we saw it for the first time. You feed pig coconuts, Pigs don't eat coconuts. They can't climb the trees. So when you go up, climb up, you get coconuts, cut it and feed it to the pigs, knowing that it is your food chain. You eat pigs. So how to treat a pig so that you can eat a pig is like, wow, you really know that, like, and how to kill a pig. That is also a thing, you rear a pig till a certain age, with good food, the food that you don't eat, and then you keep mass and give it into a forest, you maintain the forest clean, and you once in a while you go so that the pig recognizes you, and then when it has to be killed, you go and you call the pig comes to you and you just catch hold of him, cage him, fight with it, and kill it at one stroke. At one stroke. It is not like no hoo-ha. 180 pigs are being killed at one stroke. And that too also not with a metal, with a wooden thing. They just put it straight into the heart.
And not a drop of blood.
Not a drop of blood anywhere. Then cut it up on the bed on which you sleep. On banana leaves. It's hold like a boat, and it's over. So it is. That is interesting. Some things are gone, like sailing on the sea. We are on a motorboat and they are on a sailboat. That the whole country has lost, the sailboat and all that. So those things are, yeah.
See, we don't know, as human beings or as people of culture that we ourselves have lost. I mean, we are mourning here for the loss of the Nicobarese culture. I mean, imagine the kind of culture that I have lost, and the language that I have lost, coming from where I come from. So it's always a huge question, how much to feel the loss and where exactly are we heading. But the question remains that what agency are we having as human beings in the course of life that the world is taking. So, and that agency and how to reclaim that agency for ourselves as human beings and for and them themselves as human beings in their own world. So how to reclaim that agency is the big question. And yes, that they did not have any agency in the changes that the world took, and we don't have much agency.
Yeah. Okay.
But in the film,
Neena,
there were some people who moved back, right? They went back to Trinket. And
Yes.
Even Chaura.
Yeah.
they, I think they probably just said, that's it, we're going back to how we knew it.
Yeah.
Even for Chaura people were also in Teresa. And they said, no, you cannot go back. Chaura is only on a tip of a coral, it cannot stay there. But they said, where you have put us up in somebody else's land, we can't live there. Well, no, there is so much of land, you people stay there, but does not belong to us, it belongs to them. So we have to go back. So one day, when the season was right, they made their own boats. In that 1 year, they made boats, and everybody, including the temporary shelter, metal, and everything, they took and went back. And then the government decided, okay, let's because the Trinket is also, Trinket also there. Not everybody, a couple of families, and there's like, what are the rest of the people doing? They're watching TV. They're in Vikas Nagar, Vikas, the Trinket people have been put up in Vikas Nagar. Vikas Nagar mein kya karta hai? TV dekhta hai. That is the thing. Electricity brings in television. That is the only thing that electricity has to offer. Mobile recharge and television. That is a big problem there also.
I think for me, the most interesting thing that I thought about while I was watching your film was notions of helping someone. When you think you're helping someone and you don't give them what they actually want, how they want to be helped, and definition of what home is.
Yeah,
And
I think, yeah, the help thing is actually a completely, a colonial concept, it's completely a colonial concept. We have been victims of that. And we are also perpetrators of that concept, as much as victims, we are perpetrating the same thing to somebody else who we think needs help, so I think it's a fault in the mind, a mind of the colonizer, or the mind who thinks is better than the other, uh, you know and it's something that we have to look into ourselves and correct ourselves.
And also the position from where you help, you help by not doing anything. I'll give you something, you will have to still manage it. One interesting one, when in Chaura, the big festival was happening. So there were a lot of people, they invite people from other islands. So there were a lot of other islands. So one day we were in one house and there is we got talking to some people who were from Karnikovar, they could speak a little Hindi. So then we asked them, so why are you working so much? You are from other guests, you are the guest, no? So you have some time now. Why are you working? No. Here the concept is very different. When people come to your house, they work. The guy, the host, he is not doing anything. The host, I said, who is the host? He is sitting, he's drinking toddy, he can't move. There, the host is just sitting. So the host's job is to distribute work. And they are all working, completely. Well, I have come here so that we are going to work. So but the way the help that the Indian government or otherwise, they give money, they say, what they need, or they might be need chocolates were held when I was, well, okay, fine, they are in the middle of an ocean, so they need energy. Send them chocobar, huge amounts of chocolates, can you imagine chocolates?
While
Washing machine.
While leaving one island, imagine the gift I got. Other than there were several gifts, coconuts and bananas. But imagine one gift I got. I got a huge carton full of shampoo.
We don't use this. You
Because
take it.
yeah, you can take it. And I came and that shampoo, I could use that shampoo for the next 3 years. There was huge carton full of shampoo I got. Which means imagine the things that were loaded onto them and they didn't know what to do with it, that they can give away something that I can use for 3 years.
We were put in that island when we went, there was a shed which was used by contractors. We cleaned it up and there was one bed. All of us were there. And then, what is there? And we first had to clean it. So under the bed there was another cart. We took it out. We opened it. What is inside that? There is what is called a rapid testing kit for malaria and dengue. I said, what? Not one, so many of them. They are expensive things. Then another carton, we took it out, a camera, a tripod, a projector. I said, what is this? They're all new. They're all called fungus and all that. They're all underneath the bed. So that, you need rapid testing kit for malaria. You need that for dengue. But and then somebody is dying. The other place, there is no doctor. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, Nina,
yes,
can we invite other people also? Marudan Pasupati, can I invite Marudan?
Please, anyone, please pitch in.
Marudan, go ahead, Marudan.
Yes.
Marudan Pasupati. Yes.
Your mic.
Your mic is
Marudan.
mute. Your mic is mute.
Marudan, unga mic unmute பண்ணுங்க. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Hi. I just want to apologize to all because I cannot participate the entire conversation because I need to attend a funeral. So please forgive me. I just want to say a few things about this film. Actually, it's a poignant tale. It's very poignant, very I can compare it to another film which Amudan showed me recently. a documentary titled Bird Trapper or Burger. So it's about a nomadic people of Karnataka here in India, named Haki Pakis. So in which their basic way of living is hunting and begging. So what happened is government, as usually, government tried to make those persons civilized. So they pick the bow and arrow from those person, from those people, and give them money. They built houses. After few years, the filmmakers visited those people and make an interview. In that, a woman told with tears that, please let us allow to beg. Please let us allow to beg and live with peace and dignity. Allow us to hunt. So that's what's happening in your film too, it seems. Simply money and facilities provided by government doesn't always give the prosperity and peace to people. So this is what is happening all over the island. I mean, especially in recently I visited Andaman to make a Jarvas for our film. The same thing happened there. To make those people civilized, I heard from one of the officials there, they caged a person, a Jarwa, for 1 month and provided a rice and all those stuff which these civilized people have been taking. What happened is he got a lot of allergic reactions. And after a month, without knowing what to do, simply they put that person into the jungle itself. So
you are talking about this Jarwa. I don't know,
yeah.
but in Nicobar case, it is some people amongst themselves. So they very clearly say, go ask the tribal council. Without the tribal council, there is yes, obviously, the government is not an anonymous. The government works through networks which is inside you and your community. That is how it approaches. Otherwise, because it is a fact, in Chaura, if you go, they will simply throw you out into the sea. Or they will, if a community till a couple of years before had a tradition of culling their own people, own culling, in terms of deformities, you cull your own blood line so that you as a civilization, so there is no question of culling the other, stopping to kill the other who is trying to get into you. So it is no more now a government which is a third party versus islanders. It has somehow gotten very enmeshed, and it is now a negotiation. And in that negotiations, the people who are the power brokers or the wise men within, and who are these wise men? Previously, they were wise men who knew things about the rituals, and now all of a sudden that shifts from being he who knows the ways of living within that system to somebody who knows a new language. The moment you have to interact, you have to have somebody who knows English or Hindi. The person who knows the language becomes becomes in the center, and these people have become power brokers. The fact that in Nicobars you have Prince Rashid, they all of a sudden you have people who are actually kings within a community which believes that every Panuhanot we are going to burn everything of ourselves. Each and every resource. Big festival is also a festival which is like Red Indian festival. It is where annually or once in 2 years they use up all their resources so that the entire society becomes can start working from again. They'll everything will be distributed. No accumulation will be there. But in money also, money, all of a sudden money accumulates. See, at one end. So when a lot of accumulation has happened asymmetrically, it will all be put together in a common pot. All resources will distribute. Now we are all equal. Everybody is, that is what the ritual is happening in Chowra. They're going one house to the other. We start again, you know.
Yeah.
That has been very systematically ruptured, and we cannot. The fact is that they know it. I mean, we could sense it, but there it is very clear. They're saying it's not happening from outside, and you know, and he who is doing it ends up confessing it. Unlike here,
the money aspect of it, you know, the money, the huge compensation money they received after tsunami. So the money was introduced into their system. Not that the money was not there, but it was not to the extent and the scale and the nature with which it was introduced after the system.
the coconut, they have a depreciating money. It's
in the sense that every time they needed money, then they used to harvest a patch of the coconut farm, and then they used to convert it into money and then use it. When they don't need money, they don't harvest that coconut patch. So the money stayed with them as coconuts.
No. Once again, just to correct it, coconut was not used to get money. Coconut itself was the money.
The currency.
Itself was the money, but the coconut had a depreciating money. So in Switzerland, they have a money which does not get any interest. But here, your money would depreciate if you accumulate. So the most important thing is you have to distribute the coconuts. You know, otherwise it will rot. You know, you have to give it to somebody who does not have it now. He will repay. The notion of trust. Yeah, obviously money is a trust thing only, you know. What else is money, you know? So but that is the shift. When money is being accepted, that means a certain notion of trust within an 8 square kilometer island, 1600 people. If they start using money, that means there is a loss of trust within that 80,000, within that 1500 people, you know, the general trust, you know, it's a matter of trust. You know, I take this and I will pay you back. To reduce that trust so that they have to use money means either they're dependent on outside things, or there is also a lack of trust. And yes, there is accumulation happening. You know, a government employee, primary school teacher in Nicobar, because one 7th pay commission in generally, plus a remote island thing, altogether, you know, earns a huge amount of money. So he has a car on a road which is only 3 kilometers. There is only 3 kilometers of road in that entire island. He has a car. You know, his petrol comes from the huge amount of accumulation. He doesn't know what to do with it. There is nowhere to spend. You know, he goes for holidays to everywhere around the world. You know, not everybody can go.
So during tsunami, the 90% of the coastlines were gone, which means their traditional currency was gone. What they could that really made them rich in their hearts and in their minds and within their own community. 90% of the coastlines were gone. 90% of the coconut plantations were gone. So this sense of, and then after tsunami, money came. For 7 years, everything that they wanted, it came. So the sense of scarcity, they suddenly encountered with the sense of scarcity and the sense of not having what you can probably get everywhere all the time is after the money got over. In front of our eyes, when we are going in the bank, we see a young boy, you know, he's going, writing a slip and saying that I need to withdraw this 3,000, 4,000. And the bank in front of the counter, he says, no, your bank has nothing. And then he's shocked because now, which means it's over. Because now where it's going to come from? What is it that you have to sell that you can get or buy money? So it was all gone. And now is the game that really starts when your coconuts are not there. When your houses, which the government built, at one point of time, they have to crumble down because there is no inherent mechanism that can build up to its maintenance.
In Teresa Island, there is one outsider, you know, mostly Tamil people run shops near the jetties. So there is this Tamil guy, you know, we traveled with him from Chowra to Teresa in his fishing boat. So he runs a shop. He asks the local people that you give your checkbook and passbook to me, you know, and you whatever when the moment they got the compensation, obviously these people are also helping reach out people to, okay, how many people? So there are other people who know all these things, So they were, okay, I know this guy. So the entire list was prepared by them. So all these checkbooks and passbooks he kept with him. He opened the shop. He said, anytime you need anything, you can come and take things from my shop. Now, the compensation money was huge. When 5-6 lakh rupees of whatever death, then land, such huge entire island was cut up like cake and given to every household, and the equivalent number of trees, how many pigs, how many goats, how many chickens. So all that money came. Now this guy, what he did was he took all those passports and anytime you need anything, you can take. He continued it for 10 years. After we came back, we heard that he was been arrested, because he became a huge guy, rich fellow. So they need nothing, So they don't even know what this bank account is, And till the last man got his money, everything was put on hold. Every time the government says, okay, enough, let them do. The chief secretary is saying, come on, what can we do? Now when you are saying the government is to blame, what does this government? This government, the machinery itself is saying, come on, you can't do this. The moment it stops, somebody puts a PIL in the court. You have not finished making your house. Those are saying, we don't need houses. You promised houses, you have to build the last houses. If you don't finish your thing till that time, you have to keep pumping money. They keep that government who is functioning, making the government is, no, you can't do this. All these people are saying, all the people we met, they said, come on, we knew it, but we can't, we couldn't stop, because at that point, so hence, it is not a bad will. The biggest challenge is this, guys, it's not a question, what do I do? These people are, if I don't go and give them whatever I have, there are other people who are saying that what are you doing? What kind of a person are you? So every person is functioning with absolute probably goodwill, but from his own worldview. That was the major problem. There was no to have a jetty there or to. So that for us that was the problem. They said you just couldn't stop, and it went on and went on and went on.
Okay.
Yeah, introduction of money to those people exactly resembles like a Coke bottle in God's Must Be Crazy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And all those.
It was that. Now they have like bikes, motorbikes, big motorbikes. They are hanging on the doors. They hang it with the ropes, like they hang the hori, like they hang the canoe. And now there is no petrol. From where will they get petrol? Like there are cars, but so it's like that, and then everything becomes junk, and I don't know. I really wish to go back. It's been 10 years already, and I'm talking as if it's happened yesterday. But
things have changed.
but how are things going to be now? Because in 2010, when we entered the relief and rehabilitation, the last houses were being made and everything was being withdrawn, and people were left to themselves. 10 years of being with themselves in the situation that was unfortunately or fortunately, whatever the way it was created, how is life today? I really wonder. I wish we could go back. We need to ask Manish Chandi. We have to ask him. Probably he knows. So.
Yeah, Nina, now you can ask your own questions you wanted to have.
Shailaja and Mr. Dureraj, would you like to?
May I speak?
Yes, please.
Nothing to particularly ask. It's been really nice listening to the whole thing, and each sentence both of you were saying was like resonating with so many other things. Like I was thinking of like the Australian Aboriginal thing, even films, popular films like Charlie's Country, whatever was addressed in those things with Aboriginal stories. I think you're talking about something like that, and we haven't realized the intensity of this in Nicobar post-tsunami. That's something we were not aware of at all. And it was very nice to hear those anecdotes of what you were saying. Like they would wait for you to drink your tender coconut and then give you the other things. I think there's so much to think of all this, and very insightful when we said we've been colonized, and that's exactly what we do in another form. today, I mean, even the language we all commonly speak, we got it by the same system where we lost something. So I think listening to you all is wonderful. Thank you so much. And Nina, hi. I remember you from
Yeah.
MPC. Good, thank you. Please, love listening to
Yeah.
you.
And I would like to say one more thing. I would like to add up. In the whole film, I didn't find the domination of filmmakers' voice anywhere in the film, which is a good sign of it's a good sign of a great artist. You know, it's like submerged. Your voice is always submerged in the film. It's like
No, actually, our voice in the sense that what will I say about a people? Uh, how can it be my voice? It has to be. I was a listener. I had to be a listener.
There were multiple voices.
And you know, we had to be listeners because I was a very tiny stakeholder there. There were multiple, you know, stakeholders, bigger stakeholders, and the biggest stakeholder in their life was they themselves, and they were grappling with their own situation so much that we were only a witness to that.
yeah, I mentioned it because most of the filmmakers won't do that.
No, see what was happening, this one realization which very strongly happened to us while making this film is that the multifacetedness of truth. Theoretically we all understand,
Exactly.
but here we realized it. Here you're talking with one Martin, you know, in 2010 when we visit him, he is running a shop, shop is full. 2 years later when we go, his shop is little not full, and we are sitting in his house and he says that, how Martin, your shop is full? He said, oh no, you know, yeah, right now the laborers are no more there, so we are not selling anymore. So what is going on? Then Martin all of a sudden tells a story that one night people had compensation money. The people used to come, take rice, give. So one lady used to comes and he takes rice from him, and she does not have money. You know, so Martin stops giving him thing because that is the ethics of business. Martin also happens to be the village captain. Then he says in the night, Martin said that I could not sleep. So he said, because we know everybody. So in the night, Martin opens his shop, takes rice, goes to her house and gives it. Now, okay, money has been introduced. But we know that 500 rupees was distributed after a tsunami to each one of us. You know, I being the village head, I was also asked by the thing, why can't we do some business? You know, I have more land, I opened up a shop. Now I know whom we make sure that should not get that 500 rupees. That person comes asking for rice, you know, does not get rice, goes back, the entire system has collapsed. 2 days I send her back. Third day I cross her house every day, you know. So he had to open his shop and go and give her rice. Then he realized doing business in this island is a stupid thing. So he shuts his shop because he realized if he's the guy who runs the shop, you know, he has to play God after a point, you know, because money he will accumulate and he doesn't know what to do with it. So, and the same story you hear from multiple people. The assistant commissioner is saying that we have cook trees coming from other islands. These people are not accepting it. You know, there is something must be wrong. You know, please go and explain it to them. You know, then you go and you hear a completely different. Okay, fine, the trees will come, but if I plant it, the land does not belong to me. If I plant it, then they will cut it off because I am entitled to the fruit. We have to. It's a complex worldview which they so this Islam, Christianity, you know, this guy openly, I land up in his house, you know, he was not previously said something, you know, he said, okay, I converted everybody to Christianity. 3 days later, he realized, oh, what did I say? You know, same is with Islam, you know, another, this guy, Rafiq, or in the interview, see in Central Nicobar, what is this lady's name? Aisha Majid, you know, Aisha Majid and Rashid, you know, they are talking, but these are not new phenomena. These are old phenomena, you know. So, and their relationship with peaks. So but they are all coexisting. You know, there is no internal rift and tension. You know, all those, Islam has its own forces and intentions which are working. Christianity, which was brought in by that father John Richardson, that is also at work. Their animism and this Panuhanot and Chaura pigs and all that is also at work. Okay, coconut trees are not there, so the pigs have to be reared. What we do? Pigs are eating too much, and all those forces are playing themselves out in a laboratory, which is going to work out. You know, they are willing to experiment everything for a sustainable kind of a system. You know, the outside of those islands is not actually isolated. They know it very well. Now, will they be able to kind of strike the balance is the big question. And they are aware of that. And that is what they are working out. Only thing they know is that, yes, they will have to be together. Whatever said and done, some places they are really, and they're together, you know, even in terms of Car Nicobar. The fact that, okay, we will accept, even if, okay, we'll all become Christians, you know, need be, we will accept petrol, whatever we will do the deal with the outside world, it is going to be a collective deal. And that nobody talks to you alone, they will have meetings. So that is the most important thing. They are willing to try things out.
Yeah. Nina, can we invite Peter?
Yes.
Peter.
Yes.
First of all, I thank the director for producing such a wonderful documentary. I really enjoyed it. During the course of the discussion, I am able to perceive several other things, which is very. Am I audible?
Yes. Good. Yeah, we can hear you.
The interaction and their sharing is very, very useful, and it is absolutely new to me. I'm very grateful to her. Really, it is a peculiar movie. First of all, very thanks. My question is, how come she able to understand these things and take the documentary on this subject, which is almost known to everybody? That's it.
I think it is, as I told in the beginning, it was a friend with whom, you know, we heard his story of surviving the tsunami. That is what caught our attention, and then that's how we began our research. So that was the first way, you know, actually, it was through friendship, actually, and our interest in what was happening and what was the stories of survival that caught our attention. But how, once on ground, once into the film, how were we able to navigate? I think one thing we did not kind of speak of, we were able to navigate and we were able to find an acceptance from them. I think it was because of our daughter, who was 9 months old that time. And it was she who was the icebreaker, really. And because of her, we were able to become comfortable and make them feel comfortable that there was a child with us. And it might look really difficult that with a child who is still really an infant, and you know, but that became a language and a way to kind of enter into people's hearts and homes and forge friendships, and also kind of understand, because at some level we are all human and we are all trying to find home.
Yeah, they don't talk to people, you know, that is the thing. You know, you sit there, they will not talk to you at all. You know, if you land up and get down in Chaura Jetty, there is no hotel to go to, there is no guest house to go to. So now you will wait for, either you will ask, will you help? So now if you ask help, they don't know what to answer, they will walk away, or you will keep sitting there. But since we were sitting there like that with an infant, so there one woman comes and takes the baby and go. So you have to, at least you can follow your daughter, you know, who has been taken away and been given a bath, you know, and then they put some food in front of you. And that is, I think, at least allowed us people to start saying things, you know,
Converse-
otherwise we are like a government employees. Okay, you have come to do your job. I'm sure you must have come in a ship, and there is a ship will come to take you back. Go, you know, they don't talk.
Indeed, it was a daughter because of which we could really enter people's homes and hearts, where we could enter this, you know, familiar, homely acceptance, which is what led to longer conversations and, you know, a deeper confidence. So, and then it was just a matter of listening, actually. It was simply a matter of being there and listening.
You have beautifully presented the case. Just 2 more points with that I will conclude. How long it take for you to conclude the documentary? And do you have any suggestion? Suppose you are a government official, what you will recommend? Are you suggesting something? You are just described the problem. Suppose you are the representative of the government. What you will suggest?
That is actually I am not sure if that is the role within the as a role of filmmaker, but I would suggest to work collaboratively on a deeper level and work with the anthropologists who are working on in the region and with the tribal council, because one tribal council is actually a power hold, and anthropologists are the one who understand the power structures within the tribal council. So I think a closer collaboration with anthropologists in the region and who are kind of working at the level of humanities would really work.
It is very interesting, because when this assistant commissioner told us about this tree planting problem, that our nurseries have trees, they are not accepting. You know, that time when we got back to our home that day from the outside the assistant commissioner's office, the answer to it lies in a book by Bordwell? वो किताब किसका था? E.H. Mann and I forgot. There was an old anthropological document which told how their land ownership concept was there. Either somebody tells you, you know, or because it is very important for government officials to understand what is the law of the land if they are enacting any laws. You know, there is not only one law. There are very customary laws which govern things. You know, the biggest problem is owner. That lady says, I did not know what a household is. You know, the fundamental thing was money and the way the society had to be that reorientation. And there were some people from amongst them that they did it, you know, who is going to get compensated how much, you know, so how much do you own is what is your loss? There is nothing my loss, you know, we all lost it. You know, we had to individually calculate the loss because the form is like that. And that was the primary thing. And nobody could talk about this filling up of the form, because they did not fill it up, somebody else anyways did it. So there was no question of them talking about it. And even if Potiphar and those people were a part of that, they know that they have done something which they are extremely sorry about it. They are sorry about it. They know what their implications are, but they are not sorry in front of the camera. But they're still in a scenario like this, in other mainland things, you know, they will tell a different narrative. In this particular case, they're sorry about it, but they are beneficiaries, you know. Here you can see that, you know, it works like that only. There are people from within who take chances, not necessarily with a bad intention, but with I don't know. They are compromising with a certain with an autonomy, you know, of his. But what the government? The chief secretary is saying that it is a complete welfare state. The DGP told Richa, come on, why are you making a film on these people? Because the government, the PA to LG did not want us to anyway to enter the islands. 4 months we were in Port Blair, not being allowed to go in. You know, the DGP is saying, come on, I have 500 people in my jail, you know, who are there for no reason. You make a film for them. You know, he sent us to the prison at 10 o'clock in the night. You go to my prison. I'm introducing you to these people. You know, their situation is worse than the Nicobaris. You know, they are welfare state. You know, they ask for anything, we will send it to them. We have to. Achha, another, when you talk about representation, a Nicobari does not write a letter to the government office. A Nicobari writes postcards to the Prime Minister's office. you know, they showed us, you know, when you go to see, here is a postcard sent by my water tank is not working, so and so, letter addressed to PMO, they write letters to Rajiv Gandhi and Indira Gandhi still, because they were the two people came, and this, the whole island, every kid knows that if you write to Indira Gandhi, and because that is, they, when Jameen diya tha na, the entire land, the annexation happened, you know, these two people were there, Rajiv Gandhi, they write a letter to the PMO and PMO still addresses them. From PMO order comes, go fix that tank. You know, what is this happening in that island? But it's a reality of 2017.
Yeah, tribal privilege.
That is what the PWD service, what assistant engineer is saying. You know, a letter comes and within 2 days from top to bottom phone goes, like Richard wrote a letter, I need a cycle. You know, everybody went mad, you know, that she also wrote a letter, we need a cycle. We are in the Miss Island. So people came running, who is looking for a cycle? Who is looking for a cycle? You know, so so
How long it take for you to take the documentary?
It took us 5 years to make the film.
5 years.
Yeah,
Oh,
it took us a long time.
it was FD also, but it took a little time, 2 to 3 years to like shoot edit. And then in FD it got stuck, you know. They did not know what to do with
Yeah,
it.
at one point of time, they said, with all goodwill, they said that, Richa, why don't you make a silent film? You have such beautiful visuals, make a silent film. So, but I think,
They also said, give us the footage, we will edit it.
no, I think there were, you know, one, though we didn't know the language. So our questions were really simple, but sometimes our questions were going in one direction and the person was telling his own story in another direction, which was a wonderful discovery later when we were looking at the transcript. So we had these stacks and stacks of transcripts, you know. So luckily we had a girl who also knew Hindi, English and the local girl. So we were doing these transcripts. So then we go to the second schedule and we somehow try to find the same lady and, you know, oh, you had said that, which we didn't understand. So then, you know, some new stories are kind of
What happened in the
tumbling out.
first schedule we shot, we did not have anyone for us to translate. So when we came back, we realized that it is impossible to do it. In the second schedule, when we went back, there one girl met us in the guest house, Nafisa, by chance, and she started helping us with the transcript. And she said that I don't understand what they're talking. I said, come on, you are a Nicobari. But they said, this is not one Nicobari, you know, there are 8 different languages, Nicobaris. You know, they are in the film, there are 8 different languages. And one island person does not understand the other. Then we said, okay, Nafisa, will you travel with us? So with Nafisa, we started traveling. But Car Nicobaris, that the people of the language of Car Nicobar, everybody knew, because that was the Nicobarese language that everybody, it is the main official language. So now when we went to all these other islands and we started then subtitling the footage, you know, then we discovered certain things. Okay, this lady was telling a story, and halfway through the son says, come on, don't tell all these things, stop. The topic changes. We did not even realize that. Then we had to look for that lady again. Then when we went to our village, we could not find her. Then we found her in a hospital. You know, then again that same story we did. And in the second schedule, we were subtitling the footage every night. The entire footage we were subtitling it straight. That was the easiest way to go about it.
So we have the whole footage subtitled actually. The whole footage is subtitled.
Yeah.
anyhow, it is a wonderful presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks so much. It's really eye-opening.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Nina, you want to have further questions, comments?
No, I thought it was very eye-opening, and I can well imagine the challenges that they had there while filming it. And I just feel that, you know, whatever we spoke about now, all your insights after making the film, which are not really a part of the film itself, I think it would be great to have if you could write about all these things also.
Actually,
A long form article to really understand the situation there, because when you look at a film, of course, we do understand the situation, but we're imagining, but the kind of things you're saying, I can't imagine the ecological devastation there with all this junk and just lying there and rotting there, sheds and sheds of provisions of steel, iron. There must be a lot of plastic junk too. And from what I've seen, it's a repetition of what's happening. When I visited an Irula settlement, the Narikuravas, and speaking with them, I mean, this was years ago, years before the tsunami, during my early days as a filmmaker and as a researcher. And I saw how culture is just eroded by mainstream, like a sort of we want everything to be the same, right? A monocrop rather than, a diversity. Although we love to portray ourselves as a diversity, we're not very accepting of it. And I see this repeating itself again and again and again. And I really wish that you would write about it. Also, like, because whatever we discuss now, a lot of it is not in the film. It's not easily understandable in the film. And I honestly, I think this film should have, you should write about this because it's really important.
I'll really take it seriously because I want to write. What happened was that 6 years into the film we were so exhausted, really like spirit, like inside, like from inside out we were our funds were exhausted. It's not easy to survive as documentary filmmakers. And
absolutely,
the spirit was like there's a daughter to raise, and it was so exhausting.
And you have a feeling that
no, I understand that. I understand that very well because I face the same challenges, and I'm not an active filmmaker anymore. And raising a child, making a film, especially when both parents are in the field, it's not an easy thing at all. And a lot of times when it's over, actually after editing it, you understand your film much better. When you in hindsight, right? And which is why I really feel that this deserves a long article. I think that would do the people there also justice. The many things you couldn't put into the film, if you can transcribe some of the interviews and put in more, because in the film we are bound by time, right? We have to edit it down. Whereas I think if you approach any of like the Caravan or one of those
the narrative structure,
magazines that allow for long form articles.
Yeah,
this is really it's so crucial.
This is the only way it can be done, because in filmmaking, the narrative structure of film is such that it tries to build up an argument, and that is what a lot of people are saying. Where is your voice? There is none. There is a multiplicity. At one point, we went to Tartu. We went to Tartu Department of Semiotics. We thought this is the only film to understand, where if I can open up various sequences of one island, and now you listen to all of this and you have to decide who is right. They are so well, all perspectives from which you can look at the material and look at a film that contradict it completely.
Yes, and there are so many ironies, right? Like they're building these kind of houses, but if a resort comes up, they will build a beehive structure again, and we'll pay thousands of rupees to spend the night there. It's just horrible.
That's in fact happening. That's in fact happening because the big debate now is how to make money. And when the question becomes how to make money, what can you sell? Then you end up selling your culture.
No, and then what do you do? How to standardize the food that you eat?
Yeah. So that Prince Rashid and all these people are getting into kind of having a resort in Port Blair, where the people from the central groups will come and build these beehive structures in Port Blair, while they themselves will end up living in these 2 BHKs that were, and then they would not have the internal mechanism of maintenance and restructuring and rebuilding the housing.
And then you don't sell your culture. That is also a fallacy. The fact is, what you do, I realize here, is you cook up a culture. You cook up a culture of yourself, which is palatable to the other. That is fact, because you are ashamed. That you can't serve the poor the way you eat. They can't. I had no clue. They eat raw. Absolutely. In that same shot, you see there is raw and there is cooked. The boy who is fed of when there was nothing but rice and dal and oil and the other outsiders are cooking, they're still eating rice and cooked meat. And those boys who attain the age of 17, 18, pre-tsunami, they still have a taste. And they are so distinctly apart. The one who eats this can't eat that. And the other who eats, they're same brothers and sisters. Ones who eat that can't eat this.
No, and I think a series of articles actually. The more I think about it, I think you should do it. Like you should actually make a series. I love that one line where they say the graveyard. There's a graveyard of people who are not Christian or Muslims. They're just normal.
Yeah.
I mean, the line spoke so much. It spoke so much, especially in the times we live in, right? And I have to say that I think this film is just a start. It's just a beginning. It's not complete in itself, and you really need to revisit all that material. And I'm sorry, I hope I'm not sounding didactic. But
No, you are not. It's a sad thing. We need a.
I don't want to, give you an order that you have to do it. But
there was this
space to put the footage.
There was this. The whole idea was that we kind of create an online repository.
Yes.
We had even we had even sort of getting a fellowship with the Goldsmiths University to kind of create an online repository, because in a film there is a singular narrative. It begins somewhere and it ends somewhere. But what if we can create container?
Yeah, you need to pick out the various threads and write about each. That's where I see this going.
Writing is
And
the
I think you should reach out to the Pari network or to like a long form supporting magazine like Caravan or something like that. And it's so vital.
Thank you so much for this push, because it's just, we are running ahead and things are falling behind, and thank you so much for this push. I think yes, we could do that, I think, yeah, we could do that. Thank you.
Wonderful.
This was an amazing morning. I really enjoyed this discussion. So interesting. Thank you,
Thank you
Amul.
so much to
Thank you,
Amita,
Shailaja and
actually.
Peter, for joining us. Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks so much,
Anybody else have come? I think Shailaja wants to leave. Peter, do you have any comments?
No, it is a beautiful movie. I think
Okay.
some article can be written on this issue.
Wonderful.
Because from A to Z, nothing is old to me. Everything is new.
Yes. And he's a staunch communist, as a trade unionist, is asking you. Who believes in developing people. So
I salute her. Really, I salute her.
He believes in developing people, so he thinks, it's a very good idea. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
Thanks, Anudan. Can we see
Thank
you?
you. Yeah, I will. I'm just like happily lying on the bed and so thank you. Bye. See you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thanks, Nina. It was lovely meeting you. We'll keep in touch.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes.
Nina, thank you.
And I'm just down the road from Auroville on
Yes.
road.
You live here only?
Chennai.
Oh,
Yeah.
I live in Nilankare, so I'm not very far.
Oh, okay.
Nina does not know.
I didn't know that. Amudan, I had no idea you were in
I
Nilankare.
just shifted. Yeah, one
You're
month.
walking distance.
Yeah, I just shifted 1 month back. Yeah, I've not told her. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, she's the daughter. She was.
Hello.
Oh, nice.
Hello, madam. Madam. Hi.
Feeling shy.
Came to Madurai. Remember, you came to Madurai.
you remember?
Hey.
You came to Madurai. Remember? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. You don't remember? Okay.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
Bye. Have a good day. Bye.
Same to you.